Hi everyone, this is Kushal Shishmali and welcome to our YouTube channel. Today, as you already saw in the previous video, we talked about the main.rs file. Just for some context, if you're looking for what this video is about, you can go in the description down below. You can search for the link that is for the part 1 of the Rust code project walkthrough or Rust project code walkthrough. Oh, that's the right one. Okay, cool. So in this video, what we're going to talk about is config reader. It's kind of very important because it's the like user facing part, right? And that's where you get to decide, okay, how do you want to organize it, what kind of parameters do you want. Okay, so I'll first talk about what's the importance of it. So whenever in a project, right, what you want to do is you want the users to have some control, and the control can also be about, let's say, okay, what like how many times do you want to refresh this database, how many times do you want this to, like, let's say, rerun after 5 minutes, 6 minutes, or how do you want it to sync. So we have written a lot of configuration files for our terminal. For example, what kind of font do you want to use? Like, let me quickly show you the my Western config, which I use as a terminal, right? So as you can see, this is my Western config, right? And I have color scheme. What do I want? macOS, Windows, capacity, blur, like background blur, sorry. So that's like Mac specific. All these things are there. They're written in Lua, so it kind of gives you a really nice stable view and be like able to use functions and all. But one thing is, of course, they have an API on the top of it, so they can actually um, export the inbuilt functions to the users as well if they want to use it, right? So that makes sense. But for our, of course, use case, what I wanted is I wanted to keep it simple and also usable, right? It's not, there's a very like trade-off, right? You can't keep it that simple that users are don't find it useful. Okay, so I'm going to talk about it now. Now it comes with some background on the algorithm. Okay, the algorithm is very simple, right? As I told you, you look at each line number and then you try to look at, okay, what is the commit that like when you do git blame, for example, you get the commit hashes, right? Then you try to look for, okay, what's the next commit hash, right? So it kind of keeps going until you want, right? I have default set, for example, is 5 in my own code because you can't keep on going and then say that, okay, now, oh, by the way, it's, it's taking a lot of time. You don't want to do that. So on the left, I've opened my context.json file, which contains two thresholds: the file count threshold and commit hashes threshold. Okay, the commit hashes threshold, as it says, of course, this will come with a README and they will be able to understand what does it mean. But if I have to explain, commit hashes threshold means, okay, how far do you want to go in terms of commit hashes? Do you want to look at last two? Do you want to look at last five? Do you want to look at last 10 as an example? Okay. So let's say, okay, I want to look at last five. Okay, that's what I want to do. And then you have this file count threshold, which is 10 right now. So that means that what are the output file count that you want to see? It could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 2. And what does it output mean? When you run the command, how many files do you want to see as an output? Okay, that's the threshold that you can set. And I think a lot of people see this, right? For example, if I'm trying to find for, if I'm searching for a file, why does it not open? Yeah, there you go. For example, if I'm searching for something, right, I'm gonna search for KR Shimali. There you go, right? It appears. This is one result, right? If I'm searching for, let's say, Rust, maybe Rust doesn't appear. Sure. Maybe let's search for CLI. What CLI? Yeah, there you go, right? So it appears over here, right? So there's so many things you can set. Now let's say over here, this is, of course, you want to see all the results. We can eventually search through them, right? But what you want to do is you want to show only 5 results. So that's why this file count threshold is there. So you can set, okay. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set it to 1 already. Okay. What this will do is you will be able to see the result immediately. Okay. One thing, if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna build the binary again with main, because it's possible that I've changed a few things and I might complain later on. So it's better to always revise it and don't regret later on. Okay, so I've copied the target release context pilot to local bin. I'm in main. Okay, and it's all good. And if you guys want to see what are changes I made, I don't, this was in our previous video, it's not relevant here. This is normal. I've just removed a comment from here because that's not possible. And this thing, I think, is just one small change. I'll talk about it later, so don't worry about it. Okay, anyways, so let's try to just go through main.rs file, which is something that you've already seen in the previous video. If you have not seen it, please go after this video. Hold on, I will give you a lot of context here, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, I'm going to do context pilot context current line. As you can see, it only gives me one single file. It gives me only one single file. You guys get it? Right? So it says context pilot output, top files for current line 39, which is the current line number, and says src elgo loc.rs. Then you can try opening it in the vertical split. You can do whatever key maps you have, right? It's all possible. Now what you want to do, let's say I on the fly I'm changing it to 2. Okay, will this work? There you go, it worked. All right, so now it gives you 2 files instead of 1. So as you can see, now there are 2 files being thrown as an output. Right now, let's say, hey, I want 100, let's just get 100 files and I'm done with it. Okay, this is what you want. Sure, I think, of course, I don't have 100 files, but you can see that it gives you 5 files, right? Because those are the number of files that are relevant to this one, crossing the threshold of whatever confidence we have, right? But this is there. Now my next thing is, of course, trying to understand, what if they want all the results? How do you set it up? Right, this is a feature that has not been implemented. I'm kind of keeping it open for all the viewers of this video until, let's say, what is the date today? This is 11th January. I'm keeping it open until 14th of January, so you guys can go ahead and fix this for me. I mean, not really for me, but if you want to contribute, anyways, after 15th I'll do it myself. So the thing that we want is that, okay, I don't want to set a number. If this is not given, I want this to be okay. Take all the files and give me all the files. Don't trim the output. Okay, and I'm gonna let you guys understand how to do it, but if not, after 15th I'm gonna contribute about this live. Okay, but how does this config reader work? How do you read this config file, and all of these things? By the way, this context pilot is like a binary, right? So whenever I'm running the command, the binary runs again. Okay, now if you guys think that, okay, that's going to be very expensive because you're going to search results again and again, that's not true. Let me give you a sneak peek on how we optimize it. So I do store the DB in our context pilot DB folder, and for each project, these are the files that are created. And as you can see, mapping.json is created. It's a very, very interesting part of context pilot, something which I'm very proud about. Not as a developer standpoint that, okay, this is novel approach and this is how you should go ahead and do it, but just the fact to be able to implement this and implement database sharding for JSON DB, it's amazing, and it's a lot of learning for sure, right? So I can go through it later on, but as you can see, this is mapping.json. I'm saying that, okay, 0.json, 1.json, 2.json are there, and last use index is 2. I'm going to talk about it in next video, next one of the next videos. Okay, cool. So let's go and try to figure out how is this read. So as you can see in the main.rs file, I'm having a config object. I'm doing config impl config because that's the type of it. I have this config impl module and I have read config, config file name, right? Simple thing, not very fancy. One thing, if you're figuring out, okay, how do I, let's say I'm a new buy, I don't know how to read the code base, okay, and you ask me, hey, where would I find it if I have, let's say Kush didn't create a video of it, how will you know that where is this config reader, like, right? So for that, always look at the file, for example, contextpilot.json, then you search for this file, contextpilot.json. In the code base is very like, of course it's a constant, right? So it needs to be declared somewhere. So you will go to src-config.rs file, you'll see that, okay, they have a constant pub const config file name ampersand star, so like a slice of string, right? Context.json, so it's there. Okay, now what's next you should do is you should search for it. Okay, where is it used? So you can see that it's used in the main.rs file. Ta-da, you're here. This is where I was, right? So that's how you can read the code base and try to understand. That was a sneak peek on how you can do it. Sorry. Now let's go to, just actually go to read config. Don't think about what is there. Maybe I should try to read the whole code and all. If you're curious, first finish reading the main file, get an idea of what we are trying to do, which is what we did in the first video. Then go through each function, try to just connect some dots, as the great, a lot of people have said this on Instagram Reels, but of course, Apple CEO said that thing. So let's just keep it that way. Cool. Steve Jobs, of course. But over here, then we have read config. I talked about it before in the very first video, just about a simple home dir, right? It takes a config file name. It just reads the config. That's it. Now over here, I could have had it as a constant, but I wanted to test it later on. So always good to pass these constants as arguments as well sometimes, because what you can do is you can just pass a different value to it and see if it works or not, or you can mock it. So let's say if you're initializing, let's say if I was doing it here, let's say another class, I'm initializing it here, right? Simple thing, let's say equal to this. Okay, the problem over here is that you will not be able to mock it. You will not be able to test this function without this dependency. uh, could be different in Rust. There could be some possibilities of doing it differently, but ideally always try to keep this function limited to what it should do. It should not be like, oh no, let's instantiate a class here, let's do this here. Don't do that. We're already 10 minutes up in this video, so I'm gonna continue. We have a config file name. What we're gonna do is, of course, this config file name is there, not the whole path, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the home directory, because a lot of configs are generally, they start from home, but it should be in ideally .config as a, if I have to follow the tradition. But right now I just had it in home folder and it's called context.json file. In the future I can change it to something else as well, right? Home dir path dot join config file name. This is join path, right? This is a third party library I'm using, home dir, because as much as easy as it sounds, it's not so easy to get the home directory because of cross platform dependencies. Okay, so if you go to this function, they have where os home dot map into, and then they have I think for each they have this probably a, I don't know, maybe a hash map storing what you have. I mean, what OS is there, what are the possibilities. So there's this OS impl probably get environment, they get trying to get the environment, I mean they're trying to get the OS, but that's it. I mean, as I said, it's being used by a lot of people. I would trust them that they've done it well. It's not something that I wanted to understand as well how to do it, so it's very simple. So I got the home directory path, and what we do is we get the config file from there. We open the file open, so we use file open joint path.clone. Simple thing, you open the config file. If you are able to open it, okay, you continue. If you're not able to open it, you error out. Okay, so that's how you can understand a match condition here, right? Then you do okay, then you do let mute config stream. What does it do? It takes JSON library which deserializes from this reader and config file dot unwrap. All I'm doing is I'm trying to get the config file out of it, because if you see, it's in the type is result. Okay, so you need to unwrap, or you can do dot expect, you can do different things, but I've still like already done match, so I know that unwrap will always pass, right? So I have this config file dot unwrap, it will not panic at least. I got it, and this from reader, with what will it do? It will just creates a JSON deserializer from an IO read. So because we have read it, and you can pass this to from reader, it will give you a JSON deserializer. This is config stream. What you do is finally you deserialize, and this config, where is it coming from? We'll talk about it. But deserialize, you pass a stream to it, and that's it. Now, why am I doing ampersand mute? This is because by default everything is immutable. If you want to convert that into mutable, you have to use ampersand mute. And over here, this is already mute, but we're just passing it here as ampersand mute, mutable reference, right? And what we do is deserialize, right? Again, over here, if you see this config struct is there, right? I have two variables, as I mentioned, or members of the struct: file count threshold and commit hashes threshold. I'm saying derive deserialize, serialize, and debug methods from it. So I can always deserialize, I can always call deserialize on the struct. Okay, and it will, from the stream, it will give me a struct with these two member variables if they exist, if it's successful. Okay, so sorry about this. Let's go here, and as you can see, I'm returning the config here. That's it. And config is of type config because that's what I wanted, right? And that's it. Ta-da! You have the config file. Very important thing, if error comes, right, what do you want to do? Because it's possible that this file doesn't exist. In that case, what I will do is I'll take the default, right? So if they don't have a JSON file, you don't want to say that, hey, you always have to create a JSON file to be able to use context palette. No, you can't do that. It's not a good user experience. What you want to do is, okay, take defaults. And as I'm saying, then you have config default. Again, as you all understood, that default is something that I've implemented for it. So default, like the way you implement for a default for a struct is like you do impl default for config. Then you define this default method, which is what I'm calling, by the way. And it returns self because it returns the struct itself, right? The type is self itself. Into config, file count threshold is default output count threshold. Commit hashes threshold is this default. That's it. Ta-da, you're done. Right, so this is, I'm reading the config file, by the way, and hopefully it makes some sense so far. So I'm not gonna proceed further with a lot of complex algorithm things. As I said, I want to keep these videos very short. The video recording is already 14 minutes, so I'm gonna stop now, and the next video is gonna be about maybe next thing, how is the algorithm looking like. But you already see I'm having a DB object here. So there are a lot of interesting things going on. If you like the video, please make sure to let me know in the comments down below. I understand there were people who had some problems with my sound quality before, so I've tried fixing it for you all. It's also a problem because I was in Linux before, and they don't have any external third-party softwares, unlike There's noise torch. I know. I've explored it for 3 4 years. Like I've explored enough things. But given the Indian traffic, I think streaming on Windows helps me a lot with NVIDIA Broadcast and the software for itself. Cool. That's it. This is Kushanshish Mali. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you come this far, please make sure to also subscribe and um, leave any comments down below. It keeps me motivated. It helps me a lot. But even if you don't do, I understand. Even if you don't like the video, I understand as well. Just let me know if I can improve. I'll try my best. If not, I'll say sorry and move on because I'm not a YouTuber right now. Cool. That's enough of it. Thank you so much. This is Kushanshish Mali. I was streaming this live on Twitch while recording it. So hope my Twitch viewers are not bored. So I'm going to go and chat with them now. Take care. Bye bye. Hope you have a great rest of the day, rest of the evening, rest of the afternoon, whatever you want to call it. Bye bye.